Live from the captain's backyard.
Yeah, well, things have happened here in East Tennessee, and so as a result of those happenings, things are also now different.
Full transparency, I'm a little bummed that we didn't take it up to the Playhouse.
Yeah, well, the Playhouse is made for like less than 5-year-olds.
I mean,
not 35-year-olds.
I'm still 5 at heart.
Yeah, your body is not. And then we would have had to try to fit 2 cameras somewhere.
Crunched up in there.
It just, would have been a look for sure.
Aesthetically, off the charts. I don't think we've ever attempted a Playhouse podcast episode.
I don't know if it was the look we were going for, but it's certainly not the look that we chose to do this time. So maybe in the future.
I was going to say, I'm not totally taking it off the plate. I think that with proper planning, I believe it could still happen. We could be in the captain's Playhouse.
Well, maybe at some point we'll get to be back in the in our normal duds, but
back in the library.
Yeah. So
until then, good morning.
Good morning. If you know anything about what has transpired here in the area, we're in the region, basically Appalachia.
Yeah.
Which is that's how you say it, by the way.
Yes, Appalachia.
Any other pronunciation of it is not correct. We're not normally accustomed to preparing for hurricanes.
No, not in the mountains.
But Helene did some damage.
Yeah.
A lot of damage, and as a result of that, we've had a great outpouring of love, support, help, and aid from the community.
It's been incredible. Really.
All that to say, the reason why we're not at the church right now is because the church is currently a local community.
It's a drop point.
Yep, drop point for resources and aid for those in need. So
because Helene, she was mean.
Yes, very much so.
Very much.
Basically, I think our county prior to Helene had either 9 or 10 bridges that crossed the Nolichucky River, which is our local river. I think as of today, standing
2.
There's like 3.
2 to 3.
Yeah. And even less are drivable. So we are currently displaced, which is the reason why you may hear a bird chirp, you may hear my chicken cluck.
Hey, we're in nature. We're in nature.
You may hear the leaves rustle, but we are outside right now.
We're gonna be one with the outdoors today. I'm actually digging it.
Yeah.
I'm digging it. It's
I
nice
think it'll be.
here.
I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be fun.
I'm gonna venture out and say this. It feels like fall, y'all.
Oh, it definitely feels like fall, especially sitting out here in the shade. I had to grab out the long sleeve T-shirt.
Yeah,
for
busted
the first
out
time.
the long tee, for the brand tee here.
Mine's unbranded.
You're unbranded.
It's just Fruit of the Loom.
You're for hire today.
Fruit of the Loom. But yeah, so that's why we change of scenery. Audio may sound just a little different, but
enjoy it. Enjoy the nature.
Part of me is like, gosh, we just need to quit right now because of what's going on in life. Part of me feels guilty for, carrying on some sort of normalcy when there are people who are so far from anything even remotely close to normal. But also, we felt obligated to continue pushing. So, again, that's why we're here.
Hopefully it's worth it.
Hopefully it's worth it. We got a fun one. We've toyed around with this episode for a while now.
Yeah.
It's brought up, or it's came up multiple times during conversation, and it's like, oh, we should probably do a full episode on that.
And then we never do.
And then we never do. But today, that's what we're going to do. So today, we're going to talk about why black and white photography may be the best form of photography.
Throw out the B word.
If not, it's at least the most pure form of photography, or I can make cases for it.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a minute, but first, let's thank our sponsor.
Sweet sponsor of today's episode of Faith and Frames is none other than us, Jared and Garrett here at Motion Creative Media, and our Blue Collar LUT. Folks, if you are looking for a drag-and-drop, plug-and-play filter for your iPhone footage, DSLR, mirrorless camera footage, look no further than the Blue Collar LUT. I think it adds a little pizzazz, a little boost,
a little punch
to
your footage.
Yeah, to your footage. Hey, give it a try. Let us know what you think. There's a link down in the description below.
Yep.
Jared, thanks for sponsoring this episode.
Hey, appreciate it. Appreciate you.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that. Meat and taters, get us the meat and taters. We're talking all things black and white and why it may or may not be the best, the boldest, the beautifulest, the bigliest form of photography.
Well, so when I first started out in photography, I'll be honest with you, I did not shoot black and white photography, unless like it was almost solely, at least initially, it was almost solely a crutch.
Yeah, it was a safety net.
If I had a scene for in my control, out of my control, elements in my control, whatever, that I just could not get the colors to work out, black and white can save the day.
Yeah.
And black and white can save the day
regardless.
It can save the day regardless, but the reason why I say it saved the day was because it removed the distracting colors. And a lot of times when I first started shooting, I was I know some of my first paid work was weddings, so you're in receptions. I also early on got paid to shoot some concert photography, which you're dealing with multicolored stage lighting, all those things. So it's really difficult sometimes to achieve proper skin tones if that's something that you're after, all those things. And it can also just be extremely distracting to see all these vibrant colors, especially if it's not pointing to your subject.
Yeah.
Well, in comes black and white. Black and white can remove those distractions, and you're simply left with luminance values at that point. So,
yeah, and well, I mean, and you've mentioned this on episodes before, you know, specifically like in the area that we live in, greens.
Yeah.
Greens can go nuclear, and I think that's a very distracting thing, whether you're in a couples session, if you're in an outdoor wedding. The greens here in our area are very difficult sometimes to mitigate, which is why I think black and white can come in handy as that safety net. And I'm not saying that we use black and white all the time as a safety net, but there are times where I may have a composition that I love. Like you said, color-wise, I cannot get it where I want it. And black and white saves the day for me on that. So I think it's a great way to remove distracting colors. It may even be distracting subjects that are a color. Like I mentioned this off camera. If I'm shooting street and there's a big, ugly orange construction sign in my scene that I don't really feel is pertinent to the scene or important to my subject, I may want to remove that.
Right.
And I can do that with black and white. It removes those distractions and removes things that take away from our subject matter.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, again, that's initially it was a like a laugh raft for me. And that's when I just started to discover I started to learn the thought processes to, why does this look good in black and white when I could not get it to look good in color? Well, again, it comes down to all those things that we just mentioned. It's the distractions that you're removing. It's the funky colors that you just cannot get to play nicely.
Here in East Tennessee, especially,
you literally end up with luminance. You've got your scale from your darks all the way to your highlights, and that's it. So yeah, it's a great equalizer when it comes to just photography in general. You're literally left with luminance values, and so that's why I even find myself a lot of times one of my favorite recipes to shoot on my little Fuji, especially if I'm just out bopping around with JPEGs, is a Kodak Tri-X 400 recipe.
I love Tri-X.
I enjoy shooting that recipe, even if I'm not shooting JPEGs, which is kind of cool. Maybe people know this, maybe people don't, but even if you're shooting RAW,
you can monitor that.
You can monitor in monochrome, right? You can monitor Adobe. Canon calls it monochrome. Different manufacturers are going to call it different things, but you can monitor your scene in black and white.
Yeah, which I think helps a lot.
It does help a lot. It can definitely help if you're struggling with your colors. You literally see the scene in black and white. Now note that the sensor's still going to capture it in color.
Right.
Like it's capturing the raw data.
Right. You're still going to have all that.
All that in post-production, it's going to be there. But at least for exposure and for all those other things that we've mentioned.
Composition.
Yeah, it's really helpful in some cases to literally just see the luminance values in front of you.
Yeah. So speaking of luminance values, this is something that many beginners may not understand. Like when we talk tones, when we talk luminance values, typically we're talking highlight, midtones, shadows, and these are things that, again, with black and white, you're really able to hone in on. Can we give like a 30,000 foot view of what those tones actually are and how they act in black and white? Because I think in color, we don't always realize, what those levels are.
Yeah, well, so I mean, again, you're literally left with only the luminance values with black and white because you're removing those color distractions and all of those elements present with color photography. So you're forced to use light as totally drew a blank there. Hopefully
well, you're using light as your it's a replacement for color. So if we talk about the actual different scales, or I'm going to call them the stairs of luminance values, you have pure white, which are things that are literally pure white. There's no information there. You have highlights, things like the sky, things like bright leaves in your scene, or anything that's close to white. You have your midtones. A lot of the times in photography, skin falls close to your midtones.
Generally,
that's typically what you're looking for with midtones with your skin. You have shadows, which would be like the shadow side of the face. It's not facing our key light or not facing the sun. We have our shirts right now are in shadow.
Right.
Then you have blacks, which again is pure black. There's no information there. So that's basically the 5 stair steps of luminance values. So with black and white photography, those are things that you're able to hone in on a whole lot more. And this is maybe a little too detailed, but like even in Lightroom, if you're hovering over certain places in your image, it's going to tell you the number of what that luminance value is.
Right.
It's going to tell you if it's a highlight. If it's close to 100, probably getting close to white, that's going to be a highlight.
Oh, yeah.
If you're in your midtones, which is your 50 to 70s, and all this is on the histogram.
Yeah.
If you're looking at Lightroom. And again, that may be a little too granular, but the thing that I love about black and white photography in relation to tones is I'm able to hone in and dial in where I want my tones to sit.
Yeah.
So if I take a picture of you and I realize that your face is a little too dark, I can lighten that up. Okay, and I can get it closer to that mid-tone tone that I want it to be.
Right, that's true. And one thing too, like I think it's kind of helpful with black and white photography. I think it gives you a little more flexibility in those white to highlight regions, like your skies. Like, for instance, and I don't really understand the science necessarily behind this, but a blown sky on a black and white photo, because you don't have any color introduced to it, like it's acceptable. Like it's okay. It doesn't even like jump out at you as like, oh, well, that's blown. But in a color photo, that exact same composition, exact same settings, it's like, you lost your sky. You know
why? Because you expected color to be there. You expected that sky to have color to it, because if I'm looking at the sky right now, I see color.
Well, that's fair.
So, I mean, this is just my brain coming into play here. Is like, well, duh, it makes more sense in black and white because I expect it to be white in a black and white image.
Right.
I don't expect that tone or that color to not exist in a color photo.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair.
Maybe that's the science behind it. It's Garrett's ridiculous brain.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a thought there. I definitely do think that you're onto something there. But again, it's just it allows you to play within the confines of those luminance values, those tone values. Again, I think it can really help with getting the exposure of the subject that you want. Like if it is a skin of a subject in front of your camera, you're going to want that to be properly exposed. Yeah. Which you can raise those values in post. You can lower those values in post. But it's easier if you get it right in camera. But as a result of that, you may lose the sky. Yeah. But again, in a black and white photo, it's just white anyway. So
well, yeah, and again, this may be a little too granular, but if we think about pleasing tones in photography, the term that gets thrown out a lot of the times in photo and in video is like a salt and peppered scene. Yeah. So in a salt and peppered scene, I want to see highlights to shadows to whites to black. I want to see those things basically checkered across my image.
Sure.
So that big white sky could be the checker that I need to my darker shadows in the image. So again, it's my brain coming in here, and that may not make sense to a lot of people, but
that's fair.
Those things are actual pleasing rules, or we'll call them suggestions in photography, which is why I think, again, with black and white, really focusing in and honing in on your tones, what they are and how they act in different scenarios, I think is very important. I think that's something that black and white brings to the table that is a little harder for color.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know what the next topic is.
Well, so with tones, we mentioned how they act in different scenarios. The the third thing that I want to mention with black and white photography, why I think it may be a better form of photography at times, um, is the light. We're able to focus in on lighting,
That's true.
hard tones versus soft tones. Do you want to give us a little explanation on what hard lighting is, what soft lighting is?
Yeah, so I guess easiest thing I could think of is like, if you go outside one day and it's cloudy, overcast, well, the sun's still up there.
Yeah.
The sucker's still up there burning.
Yeah, it didn't go away.
It's lighting the earth
Yeah.
where you're at. However, it is being greatly diffused
Yeah.
by whatever scientific matter.
Atmosphere.
Yeah, whatever a cloud is.
Clouds, ozone,
but anyway,
what still
it is
exists.
very diffused.
Yeah.
And ultimately ends up with a very soft light falling upon the earth. You remove those clouds, and it's a great sunny day like today, where there's, I don't think, a single cloud in the sky.
Nope, it's blue out here.
It is very harsh
Yes.
because the sun is not being diffused prior to it hitting whatever is on the earth.
Well, I mean, we can give a live example right now. I'm looking at your face, and the part of your face that is under the shade of this tree has nice, pleasing, soft light on it. However, if I'm looking at your hand and your right cheek, you have a slash of light on your face, which is much harder. There's a hard edge between that light and the shadow, which again is a playground that you get to decide what you want to play in. If you're a soft light preferenced photographer, you may only want to shoot in overcast days.
Yeah.
If you like those harsh slashes of light, I know you're a big fan of this when you're out shooting street. You wait for those hard slashes of light. So you're going out in the morning times, maybe later in the afternoon, because you want those big, beautiful streaks of hard-edged light.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, it comes down to preference.
Yeah.
Now for portrait work, it's typically nicer. It's more pleasing on skin if it is a softer light, which is why, like, if you see strobes in studio, there'll be this massive softbox with diffusion, or they'll be bouncing it. There's all these methods that they're using to soften the light so that it isn't harsh on the skin. That's not to say that you can't take really good photos in harsh light.
Right.
It just kind of comes down to what you prefer. Now, one thing with black and white photography that I think black and white allows you to do that color does not. A lot of times, if you're going to keep that very bright highlight, if you're going to keep that highlight, that slash of light, in order to do that, you're going to massively shift color hues.
Yeah. Especially as you're underexposing things.
If you're underexposing things so that you can retain that detail in that very bright spot and use black as your negative space or whatever, it can very greatly shift your color hues, which can make things really difficult on the color side. However, black and white, again,
there's no shifts.
There's no shifts.
It's
no literally
shifts.
like, I'm simply preserving that luminance value.
Yeah.
And so you can end up with some very, very, very dramatic scenes, compositions, ways to like help frame your subject, even in camera.
I was going to say, and one thing that I love about black and white, specifically in harsh lighting, when we think of like most photographers' favorite times to go shoot are golden hour in the evening or in the morning time, because that's when you're going to get your most pleasing, beautiful light. With black and white, that's kind of off the table, and I have a very specific example of this. We were at the beach, and I had the Rolleiflex out, and it was literally like 11:45, between 11:45 and like 1 p.m. I was just walking around the beach asking people if I could take their portrait. And I remember taking a portrait of this guy. He looked funny because he was smoking a, I guess it was a Black and Mild. And he had some like Navy tattoos. So like, he looked the part. He looked the part. And I was like, I need to get this guy's portrait. He's looking pretty tough right now. So I walked up to him, asked him if I could, and we did. But I was able to shoot that boy like totally front lit, which is against my whole ante typically when I'm out shooting. I typically like to backlight things. But I was like, you know what? I'm shooting through a red filter, which is a whole nother discussion. I'm shooting in the middle of the day and I'm on black and white. I think I can cheat this and it'll look good.
Yeah.
And it did.
Right.
I shot him totally front lit, and I was able to do that because I was shooting black and white.
Right.
So when we talk about light values, it was a very harsh lit scene.
Yeah.
But it kind of matched the subject matter. This dude was a tougher looking dude. He looked a little harsh.
I think too, from a consumable standpoint, and I didn't necessarily mean to get into this, but from a consumable standpoint, when I see old documentary, reporter images. Well, they were shooting black and white film. A lot of them were shooting actually triax.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, it was a very popular reporter film stock from what I have researched. But a lot of those photos were black and white.
Yep.
And if you're literally just looking back at those photos in history, you're not stuck on color. Like, color is not anything that your brain can use to distract you from the image. Like you're basically forced to analyze what the photographer captured strictly in luminance values.
Yeah.
And we keep talking about that, but that's what I love about black and white. It removes all of those distracting colors.
Yeah.
Plus, too, I know it's kind of fun to think about. Like, if you see an old photo, specifically if you see an old photo from your region, you're like, oh, okay, well, I know our kinds of trees.
Yeah.
I know what our grass looks like. So you can kind of even imagine it in color,
you paint
which
it in
is
your brain.
kind of cool. It's kind of a fun exercise. You can say, oh, gosh, I wonder what their fall looked like that year. You know, like all those things that you just get to play around with in your mind.
You get to paint in your brain.
So I don't know, even from a consumable standpoint, I think it's a little more thought provoking to see a black and white image.
I like that, and that actually moves us into, like, I'm going to call it our last talking point, but black and white photography is absolutely timeless.
Yeah,
I know we talk about. I think a couple episodes ago we talked about editing styles and making your edit something that's timeless, something that will stand the test of time.
Yeah.
You know, don't hop onto trends. But there is nothing, absolutely nothing, and I will die on this hill. There's absolutely nothing more timeless in photography than a black and white image.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the only things I've seen people do trend-wise with black and white is, lifting your blacks to give it a bit of a faded look.
A film look, yeah.
But, I mean, even that comes and goes. But at the end of the day, you're still left with simply the composition, the light. That's all that's present in that black and white image.
Yeah.
I think really too, though, and it's one thing that I love to do. Recently, in the last couple of years of my photography, I have learned the power of masking within Lightroom and within Photoshop.
Yeah.
Specifically, I used to maybe throw one or two masks on my images.
Yeah, you'll throw like a vignette.
I will
and then call it a day.
I will now. Very few of my images, color or black and white, either one, will have less than like 6.
Yeah.
I have so much more freedom in my mind to completely add so many masks and manipulate this image with black and white than I do with color. And I think that because if you start adjusting luminance values on a color, you're also inflicting hue shifts as well.
You're inflicting hue shifts, and I think, really and truthfully, it's a whole lot easier to recognize that there's a mask there in a color image.
Right. But you see these great
You're
images.
kind of giving away your trick as the magician.
And perhaps maybe we could throw up a few of these images from like Alan Schaller. Okay?
Yeah, the Shaw master.
The man uses negative space, specifically black.
Yeah.
I mean, pure black.
Yeah.
So well.
Alan's the man.
He is.
And he's very English.
He only shoots black and white.
Yeah.
He has a Leica that only shoots black and white.
Yeah, he's got the monochrome.
So
the M10 monochrome.
He's really good at it. But my point is I personally feel as though I have more freedom to adjust multiple masks and create completely black spots.
Yeah, you can let it go black.
And pieces of that image versus that same image in color. I wouldn't do that because again, it just doesn't feel right.
Well, in a color image, if you're going all the way to black, it really, I'm going to say, funkifies. That's a word.
I think it might be a word now.
That's a word. It really funkifies that image. If I let a color hue go all the way to black, but it's got colors beside it, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, you just don't see that.
Right.
You just don't see that in nature. And sure, I mean, if you're editing, obviously you're the
artist. Do what you want.
You're the artist.
To.
You can do whatever you want to.
Yeah.
But if you have any interest in it being even still like real to life or believable, you just can't do that. But again, with black and white, I don't know. I think it's feasible that you could still do that though. Like you can make it pure black.
Yeah.
And remove objects that are distracting visually. Anything that can help lead your viewer's eyes to your subject.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like you have a little more tools at your disposal there in post-processing.
Well, you do, and I'm going to circle back around real quick to the timeless nature of black and white photography. If we think about some of the most famous images that we grew up seeing in history books. I think one that instantly comes to my mind is the sailor, the Navy sailor, and his girlfriend or wife kissing in Times Square.
Okay.
Like images like that immediately come to mind.
Right.
Images of like JFK back in the day. Those instantly come to mind. And there's a lot of great color photos out there as well that invoke a feeling of nostalgia, but I can immediately, like I said, I immediately rattled off images right there because they were in black and white.
Yep.
I think one that you and I talk about a lot of time is the Muhammad Ali
He's
image.
standing over the dude he just knocked out.
Yeah, we're standing over the dude that he just knocked out. Like those are timeless images, and I think, at least in my opinion, they stand out because they were not in color.
Yeah.
They were more imposing, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you're not left to think, oh, well, that was shot Ultramax, or
Right.
that was shot Portra,
Yeah.
or that was shot Fuji.
Right. Don't care
or
about the film
even
stock.
today, you're like, oh, that was clearly shot on a Sony.
Yeah,
I can
that
tell
was
by the
Sony, that
grains.
was Canon, that
Like,
was
you don't-
Fuji.
It doesn't impart those other characteristics that are unique to camera
Right.
manufacturers, or even unique to photographers' editing styles.
Right.
And I do. I love photo, or I love color photos. But we're talking about black and white
Yeah.
today, and it is timeless because, again, you've got ranges. You've literally got ranges from 0 to 100,
Yep.
and that's it.
That's it.
You've got light values.
Yeah.
That is it.
And it makes me, I feel that nostalgia when I see a black and white image. Even an image that I shot yesterday
Yeah.
in black and white, for some reason, and maybe I'm the only one on the earth that feels this way, but for some reason, I feel nostalgic.
Yeah.
When I look at a black and white image.
Right.
I took some images, going back to the hurricane that we've experienced in the area. I took some images a little over a week ago as we were transporting supplies of the temporary road that the good old boys, shout out to the good old boys, by the way, with excavators and dozers and bobcats, because them boys can build roads.
Yeah.
But I took an image of a temporary road that they had built, and actually it's probably pretty permanent right now. And I did it in black and white.
Yeah.
And I did it in black and white again for that documentary, timeless mentality. And truth be told, the sunset that evening was gorgeous.
Right.
I have the raw file, and the sunset was gorgeous. And I was very tempted to leave it color.
Yeah.
But for the sake of that nostalgia, for the sake of what I call documentary photography, I went black and white. And I'm glad I did, because I look at that image and I know that I can look at that image again in 30 years.
Yeah.
And I will be flushed and flooded with those timeless emotions of, I know exactly what we were going through.
Yeah. That's fair.
Whenever I took that photo.
Yeah.
Versus if I would have kept it color, I could have said, gosh, that's a really pretty sunset on that bridge that day.
Yeah, it could distract from
the story.
ultimately what you're trying to show.
Yeah, the story was we as a community were coming together to try to recover and distribute supplies and help one another. And
right.
That's a whole nother can of worms in itself of how proud I am of this region. But I can look at that image and say, gosh, I know exactly the place we were at as a community when I shot that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's something, again, that only black and white photography can evoke, is that timeless feeling of nostalgia.
Absolutely. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I would agree with you that, which you shot it raw, so
I did shoot it raw.
You've got the flexibility.
I can still bump out a color at it. Probably won't, but I can.
You can edit 5 more images of that, or 5 more versions of that if you want to. But I think you made the right call with black and white because, again, trends come and go. Heck, my colors even have changed.
Yeah.
My colors are constantly changing. I'm constantly refining and changing and tweaking the way that I want this color to render.
And sometimes I'm flat out bored and I just want to try something new.
So take that photo for example. Like if you were to look back at that photo 5 years from now, I'll go out on a limb and say if we're still here and we're still doing this photo thing, your color editing style is already going to be different.
Probably, yeah.
So you might look back at it and be like, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
But again, you removed it all.
Yeah.
Because you went with black and white.
I ain't got to worry about it.
Which is so timeless for sure.
It's freeing. It's a freeing feeling knowing that I don't have to wonder what if.
Now, I will say this. Am I going to go buy like a monochrome? Budget doesn't allow it, but also B, no.
I'm dumb enough to do that. But again, currently right now, budget says no.
Well,
Eastman Credit Union would not like that.
I don't necessarily love the thought of specific, like right out of the gate, shutter fires. It's only ever going to be black and white.
Yeah, but you're that way sometimes too with like, I know you're not a huge fan of like fixed focal length cameras. You don't like being boxed in.
I don't like, yeah, that's true.
You don't like being boxed in when it comes to photography.
Well, when I was looking around for a little Fuji,
yeah.
I think at that time the X100
V.
It may have even been the one before that.
The F.
Possibly.
Yeah.
What was the hot ticket?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that'd be nice because it
They're
is
still hot.
pocketable,
Yeah.
all those things. But I was like, oh, shoot, but it's fixed focal length.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't like being boxed in.
Fixed focal length. I don't know. I'd like to have the option of changing lenses. Which is why, me personally, even if I'm monitoring in monochrome, I'm still shooting raw.
Yeah.
Because I would like to give myself the flexibility in the future of maybe going back and changing.
I'm going to put it down today, October the 10th, 2024. Garrett Benjamin Ware is absolutely dumb enough to buy a monochrome camera. Maybe not a Leica monochrome. Hopefully Ricoh puts out one soon.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I would love a little GR monochrome, but I'm dumb enough to go only monochrome. And it may actually help my squirreling brain at times to only have one option.
Now, I do like shooting black and white film.
Yeah.
It's actually one of my favorites to shoot.
Right now, I'm only shooting black and white because it's easy to develop and it's cheap.
That's true. That's a good point.
I'm just saying. Just saying. Jared, on that note, I'm just saying there are some things that our audience can do for us that would be greatly appreciated if they've gotten value out of this episode, or if they haven't, let us know those things too.
Yeah, share it with somebody who you think may get something out of it as well.
Yeah.
Another photographer friend, or somebody who maybe they hate black and white images. Perhaps we can maybe sway that opinion just a smidge.
They're wrong, but we'll help them.
Yeah, we'll help them. Actually, you can do whatever you want to.
Do what you want to. I don't care.
I'm just trying to make a case for black and white images.
Same.
Other than that, just leave us reviews,
Stars
ratings.
And bars.
We read all of those reviews.
Good and bad.
We also read all the comments. So think of the comment as, I don't know, a direct message to these two idiots. Because
I want to know why you do or do not prefer black and white photography. Put that down in the comments below.
Yeah. Guarantee you, I'll say this though, I guarantee you any wedding photographer that watches this is going to be like, oh yeah, it saved my butt a bunch of times in receptions.
Or live event. Wedding, live event. Like we all know that have shot those and saved our butt quite a few times.
It can save your butt. And it's well, again, not to rehash the whole episode, but you can't control what the stage is doing lighting-wise. And if it makes your subject like Barney because it's purple, I don't know. Maybe flip that sucker to black and white.
You can't control the stage, but as the violin virtuoso, you can play that solo.
I don't know how that pertains to what we're talking about. But anyways, thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Yeah, here comes the hard part.
Oh, no, I done it.
Oh, he done it. That wasn't very hard. See you guys.